Hello and welcome to another edition of The Journey. Well, as I sit here on June 17th, we are closing up one of the worst weeks since COVID, since March of 2020. And obviously, I hate to lose. You hate to lose. Everybody, every human being hates to lose, whether it be a ball game or money, just not fun. As human beings, a lot of times when we get into those losses, our emotions get the best of us because we put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into whatever that might be. So I'm here for a couple of reasons. Number one, these are the times why you work with us. This is why you hired us, so that we can help you make good decisions about your money. And secondly, I want to remind you through some charts here that the market typically wins more than it loses. And I know it's hard to see the forest right now because we're staring at a tree, but I'm going to walk you through some things. And let me remind you, if you need money in the next 12 months to 2 years, you should have that money sitting in something that's safe or guaranteed. And as a client, especially if you're retired, we have had that conversation, and you are likely to have money sitting in something safe that you need in the next couple of years. Okay. If you're not sure about that, call and we can talk it through. So let me share my screen and I want to walk through a couple charts. This is a chart that shows the S&P 500 over the last 42 years. And this is put out by JP Morgan Asset Management. So since 1980, and this is through the end of May. So what this chart really shows is the intra-year declines. So the lowest point during the calendar year that the market, the S&P 500 was. And then the gray bar is where it ended at the end of the year. So again, we remember the losses, but we have to remember that even with the losses, typically by the end of the year, the market does win. Okay. So if we see this in 32 of the 42 years, the market was positive. Now, there are years where it ended up negative from where it was, but rarely did it end up negative at the lowest point. Okay, so we go back to 87, the market was down 34%. This is S&P during the calendar year. By the end of the year, it was up 2%. That's a pretty big swing. That's a pretty big gain that those investors saw if they just held to the end of the year. Okay, now this is no guarantee. We know that the market could continue to go down. We don't know where it's going to be, but most people who are invested in the market, that money is for more than a 6-month time horizon. Okay, we are invested for a long-term time horizon for a number of reasons. Number one, we need our money to grow to keep pace with inflation, to keep pace with the cost of living. But also, the longer you're in the market, the more risk you can take. So yes, young people can take more risk. That is true. But if you're 60 years old, you still have a likelihood, God willing, that you're going to be with us for 10, 20, 30 years, okay? So you still need your money to grow, and some of that money you won't need for those 20 years. So take the long view on that. Again, take a step back. You know, I think the one of the things that when we're making decisions and strategy is taking a step back to give some distance between you and that decision. The other chart I want to show you is consumer confidence. And this is important. We've heard of the herd mentality. Warren Buffett has said, be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful. This consumer sentiment, and if you talk to anybody out there, there's a lot of negativity right now. Let me remind you, be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful. So here's consumer sentiment as of right now, May of 22. Okay, it's probably worse than that right now. Here's where it was in April of 20 and what the market was the next peak. Here's what it was in August of 11, consumer sentiment, and the market was up. Here's what it was in November of 08, obviously very bearish in consumer sentiment. So right now we're at a bottom or near a bottom in the last since 1971 in consumer sentiment. When you look at the top of consumer sentiment, the opposite of true. When people are not fearful, typically you see markets pull back. So those are two things that I wanted to share with you. Obviously, I don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen. Even experts don't know what is going to happen because there is a lot of unknowns. What I would say is this: as those unknowns become more clear, and those unknowns, I think we know what they are. They are the Fed raising rates, they are inflation, and I would say to some extent where we're at for midterm elections. As those unknowns start to become more known, the market will settle and probably move up. The longer those unknowns stay there, the more sideways and down will probably be. Now, reminder, we're already down 23%. The only way you lose when you quit a game or when you play a game is when you quit, okay? Because the market does not have an end date. There is no ninth inning. There is no time on the clock. It does not end. So when we're down 23%, typically is not the time to quit. Now, if you want to quit, there will be a time, and we can certainly have that conversation about reallocating at a time when the market comes back. But let me remind you, inflation has been pretty high lately, and even sitting in a savings account doesn't cover the $4 gas as it increases over the last 12 months. So again, we're here to answer questions. We're here to help you through this. If you have questions, please reach out. We are here. Jared, myself would have a conversation with anybody that has some anxiety out there. If you're going to make a change, make it a small one that you're comfortable with, like moving some money to cash that you might need in the next 12 months, but don't take everything and go to cash, because it's likely that you will not get back in at the time that's right. In fact, you might get in at a point that is much higher than right now. There are some people still back to 08, 09 that are sitting in cash waiting to get back in. And look at the returns they've left on the table over the last decade. So that's all I have for today. I hope you have a great day. Please reach out and we'll talk to you soon.